Human beings are funny. If you ask people, what are you looking for in a speaker? I've seen it on surveys countless times. They'll say, we want somebody who comes in here and gives us the meat, gives us the substance, cuts out all the fluff, gets to the point, doesn't bore us with a bunch of old war stories. But I actually test audiences all over the world after they hear speakers. And I always ask them, what do you remember? And by and large, audiences in every culture remember two things. They remember the passion of a speaker, and they remember the stories. Stories are absolutely the single best way to get your audience to remember anything. Before there was the internet and YouTube and video, before writing, before even the printing press, there was the spoken word. People in caves told stories. That's how human beings are programmed to share information and to remember information. So if you want to be a great communicator, it's absolutely essential you tell stories. Now the stories have to be relevant. They have to make a point. This course is not how to go out on the lecture circuit and position yourself as Bill Cosby or a humorist or Garrison Keillor. It's not about that. It's about how to communicate issues in your business, your campaign, your nonprofit, your government entity, how to really communicate these ideas to people in a way that they can remember it, and how to tell it with stories. There is a process. I'm going to teach you how. So let's hop right in.
So what's the biggest difference between great speakers, truly fabulous communicators, versus average and mediocre speakers? The difference is not the eye contact or the gestures or even the humor. The biggest difference is that great speakers consistently illustrate every single key point with a story. Not necessarily a funny story or a dramatic story, but they do it with a story. Human beings are programmed to listen, understand, visualize stories. Before there was text, before there was chipping away at stones and cave walls, people told stories. It's still the most compelling way to get people to A, pay attention, B, understand, and C, remember. Now, average speakers, below average speakers, oh yeah, TJ, I love stories. They're great with motivational speakers, but you know what? I'm a tech guy. I can't do that. Or I'm a finance guy. Baloney. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter your position. Great communicators consistently tell stories. Warren Buffett does it. Steve Jobs did it. Ronald Reagan did it. Bill Clinton does it. So if you want to be a truly great communicator, you have to tell stories. Now, you don't have to tell award-winning stories that are going to get turned into movies. All you have to do is have a few simple elements. I'm going to walk you through these elements in the next videos on this playlist, so pay close attention. But the first thing you've got to do is get over this emotional hurdle where a lot of people tell themselves, well, I can't tell stories. I don't know any stories. Well, if you've ever had a single conversation with one person about a real problem and how it was resolved, you have a story. That's all it is. People ask me all the time, TJ, can I make up stories? You could, but that's really hard. I don't want you to work harder. I want you to think smarter. The best stories for your presentations come from your own real life experiences, conversations you've had with clients, customers, colleagues. That's where you should draw upon for your story database, not from a book, not from a movie, not from you having creative writing inspiration. You need to draw upon your own real life experiences. I'm going to tell you more details of how to tell stories in the following videos in this sequence. When you're telling a story to the audience, you're not telling a story just to be a storyteller. You're doing it because there's a message there. Ultimately, as speakers, presenters, communicators, we're there to communicate messages. So the story isn't driving this, your messages. A story is simply a vehicle for making the message come alive, to make it more memorable. So realize that it's message first. In an ideal world, maybe we wouldn't have to tell stories. We could just lay out all the facts. But people don't remember just the facts. They remember the stories, and therefore they often remember the message behind the story. But remember, when you're telling a story, it's the message first. That's what is driving this engine, not the desire for you to become a big storyteller. When you're telling a story, it's crucially important for you to describe the setting. Now, the setting could be as mundane as I'm on the second floor of my office in Huntington, New York, and it's a cloudy day. There's nothing particularly interesting about that, but when I said that, you have a certain image come to mind. You perhaps have never been to Huntington, New York in an office building. In fact, I haven't been to Huntington in an office building, but the point is it creates a picture for you. The human memory is much more of a visual processor than a word processor. We're image processors, not word processors. So when you take the time to physically describe a setting, whether you're in a desert island with a typhoon coming on or just sitting in your house at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning in your favorite easy chair, paint the picture with words of the setting. Now, it's not that important that people remember all that, but what it does is it starts to get your audience to run a little movie camera in their brain, and they're visualizing what you're saying. That's the beauty of describing the setting when you're telling a story. When you are telling a story in your presentation, it's critical that you share your emotional state. How did you feel? How did the person you were talking to feel? Were you frustrated? Were you angry? Were you elated? What was the emotional component? Describe that. Now, part of it needs to come out in your tone of voice, your facial expressions, but don't be afraid to tell people, I was scared. And let people get a sense of exactly what you were feeling. Human beings are emotional creatures, like it or not. And in my survey of clients all over the world, the thing they do remember the most from the best speakers, the stories and the emotion. You put the two together and it is quite powerful. So that's why it's a problem when people say, oh, I need to be professional now. I'm giving this professional speech and here's a point, here's a point, here's a point. Well, if one of your points is profits are down 17%, don't just quickly go from there to the next point. If you have to tell a story about a client who's very upset about your new product change, exactly why they're upset, exactly why they're not going to be a client anymore, share that story, because that may be helpful to your board of directors in figuring out maybe we should bring that service or that product back again because our clients are missing it more than we thought. You must describe the emotional component. Otherwise, your speech is going to be too consistent. It's going to be too bland. It's too boring. Now, I'm not suggesting you yell and scream the whole time in your presentation or in your story, but you do need to describe the high moments and the low moments in your story to make it more interesting and more memorable. When you're telling a story, it's crucial that you relive actual conversations with real people, that you share the dialogue. And the problem most people have is they become this boring narrator looking down. And the customer explained to me he was dissatisfied with our level of service. See how boring that sounds? How sort of clinical it sounds. It's much more effective to say, well, Jane Smathers said, TJ, I can't believe you haven't delivered the product yet. I'm going to demand a refund. And I said, well, calm down, Jane. That's dialogue. When you're actually reliving a real conversation with a real person, what they said to you and what you said back. We all do this all the time, talking to friends, family, one-on-one. A client calls us on the phone at the office. We all tell stories using dialogue. The problem is when we're getting up to give a so-called formal speech, we tend to strip the dialogue out of everything and we boil it down to its bland, boring essence. Don't do it. The dialogue is what makes it interesting, captivating, gives us your audience a sense of being there, the flavor of it, and that's why it's crucial. So you must have dialogue when telling your story. And no, you don't have to make it up. Just relive actual conversations you had. When you're telling a story in a presentation or speech, you have to introduce characters and describe what the problem is. What's the conflict? Now, unless you sit in your office all day long and the phone doesn't ring once and you just get one email at the end of the day with your boss saying, "Hope you had a good day, see you tomorrow," all of us experience conflicts from time to time. We all have problems. So when you're telling a story, all you're doing is recounting the problem. Now, don't say it's with a customer. That's an abstraction. Don't say it's with the Smith Company. Say it's with Jim Smithers, the Vice President of Sales at the Smith Company. Explain exactly who the problem is and explain what the problem is. He's saying, "TJ, we got a big problem. This delivery isn't here. We've already prepaid. We demand a refund." That's describing the problem in detail with the characters. So don't be abstract. Don't say they. Don't say customers. Paint a picture with someone specific, a real person. The whole key to telling stories effectively when you're giving a speech or presentation is that you're not actually telling stories. You're simply reliving an actual experience you had. You're reliving a conversation you had. You can see it. If a client or customer was angry with you, you're envisioning them yelling at you or yelling at you over the phone. You're not making up dialogue. You're simply recounting an actual conversation. Here's the real secret a lot of people don't understand about great speakers. Great speakers are often lazy. They're not out writing and rewriting interesting stories till 2 in the morning. They're simply reliving actual experiences they had and using them when there's a story, when there's a message there that's relevant. Again, message is what drives everything. The stories are the ways of amplifying the message and getting people to remember it. So don't try to create or think of new stories from scratch. Simply relive, recount real experiences you had. That's what will be powerful for your audience.
I've got some great news. This course has been updated to be better than ever. I've listened to so many of you tell me that while you like the course, you don't like having to upload your speech, your presentation, your media interview to YouTube or some other video file sharing site and then cutting and pasting and putting that into the Udemy Q&A section. So I've made it easier for you. I've created a Facebook page that's just for my Udemy students. It's just for you. There's no sales going on. There's no promotions. It's just about your presentations, your homework, your questions. So click below the link. You can join, and there's never any charge. You'll automatically be accepted. And that way, if you want to, you can post videos, your homework right there with one click. You can just hold your cell phone, speak, one click, and it's right there on the Udemy homework page. Now, if for some reason you don't like Facebook, and believe me, I know plenty of you, and it's understandable, you don't have to join Facebook. I'm not coercing anyone. You can continue to post your videos right here in the Q&A section of this course, and there's absolutely no problem. So either way, the choice is yours, but check out the link below.
When telling a story, you must have a resolution. How did things end up? What's the point of it? Again, you may have made the point at the beginning of the story. Now you've told it. How did things end up in such a way that it fleshes out your key point? Don't leave people hanging. Don't let them wondering or guessing what happens, because if they're wondering about you off in the jungle here and now you're on to some new point of finance, they're not with you. So tie your story together and make sure people understand there was a beginning, there was a middle, and there's an ending. Here's how it ended and why we should care now. The whole key to telling stories effectively when you're giving a speech or presentation is that you're not actually telling stories. You're simply reliving an actual experience you had. You're reliving a conversation you had. You can see it. If a client or customer was angry with you, you're envisioning them yelling at you or yelling at you over the phone. You're not making up dialogue. You're simply recounting an actual conversation. Here's the